My name is Mateusz Smoter. I work at IBS in Warsaw, Poland, and today I will give a presentation about outreach activities of public employment services. So this will be a brief, short summary of main findings that you can take from our project. So I will be talking about what we've been doing in our project. So why we are even interested in outreach? So since the Youth Guarantee was introduced in 2013, a lot of effort has been put to support young people in finding a job. And in almost all EU countries, or in all EU countries, the Youth Guarantee was implemented mainly by the public employment services, which often serve as an entry point to the Youth Guarantee, which means that if someone wants to take part in this program, the registration with PES is necessary to do that. But the issue is that most young people from the need group do not contact with public employment services. And on this graph, on the slide, you can see a graph which shows the percentage of young people from the need group who was registered with public employment services in selected EU countries in 2019. It's based on the labor force data, and you can see that overall in the European Union, around 36% of young people were registered with PES. So this number varied from 20% in Estonia to over 50% in Spain. But when we look at various groups of young people from the net group, we can see that those who are more vulnerable, contact with PES even less often than those who are in more privileged situations. So I am talking about those who are that we consider as economically inactive nets. So those people who are not working, not looking for work due to various reasons, such as family and childcare obligations, illness, disability. Those are also discouraged workers who lost faith and they don't believe that there are some jobs for them. So this data highlights the fact that a large part of potential clients or beneficiaries is not reached by public employment services. And a relatively large share of them would like to work. So I think it's fair to say that they can be treated as potential clients or beneficiaries of Youth Guarantee. So what we can see in the data was also recognized by the European Commission, who considered effective outreach as one of the main challenges in youth employment policy, and therefore the bridge to jobs, which will be a continuation of the Youth Guarantee, emphasized the need to improve outreach to the vulnerable group. So what is outreach all about? So the overall aim of the outreach strategies is to identify and provide services to those individuals who typically not use them. So it's about informing them and trying to encourage them to use these services. Outreach work is often provided outside the institutional settings in a closer proximity to the target groups. So the advanced outreach staff often works in local communities, cooperate with local stakeholders such as schools, NGOs, in our context, institutions that deals with young people, youth centers, and so on. They are using various tools such as mobile stops or mobile units, satellite offices, that makes it easier to reach out to, for example, rural areas, to people who are not so mobile, and provide them services there. So within our project, we found out that there is not much information about what public employment services actually do on the ground. So within our project, we conducted a survey among the PES officers because we wanted to know whether they have some outreach strategies, whether they use these tools and instruments that allow and makes it easier to reach out to to potential beneficiaries. So here are some main conclusions from the survey, because we wanted to have like a broader picture of what is going on. So we found out that public employment services in Poland and Hungary, because in these two countries the survey was administered, usually in general cooperate with local stakeholders, but the problem is that they cooperate with narrow groups of stakeholders, and this cooperation rarely translates into, for example, joint projects. So they meet with other institutions, but they do not cooperate with them very strongly. We were also interested in how they cooperate with schools, because schools are quite important institutions, because if you cooperate with school, you can spot the vulnerable individuals even before they became unemployed or inactive. So our study showed that most PES in Poland and Hungary visits public schools, but they usually present general information about the local labor market, or they generally present PES offer. Much more seldom they cooperate in a more comprehensive way. For example, they very rarely exchange data with schools or track students during their process from education to employment. We also found out that mobile units or information points are not very popular in these two countries. So it's more about like face-to-face meeting with other institutions. What we also found was that there are interesting issues as far as their attitudes is concerned. So we asked public employment services employees what they think about outreach. So what was interesting, that while most of them agree that the outreach strategies are important, much less of them agree with the fact that they are responsible to do that. So they think that other institutions should be responsible for that. As main barriers they mentioned was lack of data on young people from the need group. So they were mentioning that it's very difficult to, if they are not registered, it's very difficult to find them and to know where they are. Especially that, for example, the data is scattered among various institutions, social welfare centers, education institutions, schools, but the exchange of data is not always very easy due to data measure protections. They were also pointing that there are insufficient financial and human resources, like staff shortages, lack of well-trained personnel, or overburden with other work, which makes it more difficult for them to engage in outreach activities. So the survey among PES offices gave us more insight of what is going on the ground, but we were also interested in finding what works, which outreach activities are effective and which are not, because we found there is very little data on that, especially in our countries and in the context of outreach activities of public employment services. So we decided to conduct studies with the use of experimental approach in 3 countries, in Poland, Spain, and Hungary. We conducted randomized control trials, and in the previous panel, it was said that they are very nice tools and important tools if you want to measure the effectiveness of the program, as you can isolate the effect and measure and interpret the results in a causal way. So the basic rule is that in randomized control trials, you divide study participants into 2 groups or more, and you provide them with one group you provide one group with the intervention, why you don't provide the second group with the intervention. So we were interested in 2 questions: whether informing young people from the net group about the PES offer will encourage them to register. So we wanted to check whether there are informational barriers, and whether organizing workshops with local stakeholders will encourage PES to engage in outreach activities. So this information campaign was tested in Poland, and workshops was tested in Hungary. And the main results are as follows. So in Spain, our research team, work with university students. They recruited students to take part in their study, and found out that when you inform students about the PES offer, maybe they are not eager to register with the PES. But if you inform them with PES offer, plus you indicate and show them where the nearest PES is, so their intention to register increases. So in Spain, the situation was quite interesting because there was a satellite PES office at the university campus, and it emphasized the need to have such satellite offices in a closer proximity to the target groups, because then their intention to register increases. In Poland, we worked with different population. We recruited to our study unregistered nets and provided them with information about the PES offer. And we didn't find evidence that it works, which suggests maybe that when you work with such a diverse group, the information is not enough, and the intervention should work also on their motivations and encourage them to use PES services. In Hungary, our colleagues conducted workshops in which local PES offices cooperated with local stakeholders, and they were working together on the PES strategy. So the results of the RCT made in Hungary was that the workshops allow to establish contacts, but not only to establish contacts, but also to retain them after some time and help to build trust, and also change the motivation of the PES officers that took part in the workshops. When they compared the results between 2 groups, it showed that attitudes of those PES officers that took part in the workshops changed, and they were more eager to engage in outreach activities. So, few words to conclude. So, our project showed that maybe if we want to improve outreach, it's time to focus more on activating nets who are inactive, who are outside labor force, especially that a sizable group of them would like to work, and but they face various barriers. We should think about reconsidering the role of PES in this process, because PES employees may not have qualifications, but they can cooperate with other institutions and other stakeholders in the whole process, and changing their attitudes is very important. Strengthening partnerships and widening the network of partners. More data is needed so that it's possible to map young needs, so that it's possible to track them, to create their profiles, but also to know what works and what doesn't work. And increasing presence in the areas in closer proximity to the target groups, as our study showed that it might increase their intention to register. So I think that this will be enough from my side, and now the discussion.